Hello my good friends, it's Buck Weezer and you've tuned to Buck's Small Engine DIY on YouTube. I have in front of me today a Toro lawnmower. It's featuring the 6.5 horsepower Kohler engine. And an interesting problem with this mower is that it will start and run for about 3 minutes and then it will just die. Just stop running. Wait a few minutes and it'll start back up again. You want to help me figure out what's going on? Alright, so we've got the machine up on the table. The owner of this lawnmower told me that he enjoys doing his own tinkering. And he installed a new carburetor. And I can see some replaced fuel lines, and this fuel filter looks like somebody's been there. I also observed that the choke plate on this even though this engine is stone cold, sat overnight, this choke plate's wide open and it's really stiff. So something's not right with that. And so yesterday I was running this, and sure enough, after about 3 minutes it just dies out completely. And when that happens, I immediately put on my spark tester to see if it had spark. And it did. Now I've seen spark plugs go bad where they're fine until the engine heats up and then they stop working. I put in a new spark plug with same thing. It'll run for 3 or 4 minutes and then die. I'm starting to think it's probably related to fuel and fuel flow to the carburetor, which may not be adequate or coming to the carburetor with a sufficient flow, and that's why it runs out of fuel and cuts off. So we're going to have to take some of this apart and test it out, see if we do actually have decent fuel flow to that carburetor. And then the fact that this choke plate's not working is another problem. So let's dig in and see if we can figure this out. Alright, let's start by removing these two 10mm nuts, 10mm socket that hold this air cleaner housing on it. And hopefully at that point we'll have a better view of what's going on here. Alright, the breather tube unplugs here. The fuel vent unplugs here. And there's the carburetor. And I've seen this before, that it's hard to get this linkage on correctly, and I don't think it is on correctly. And instead of being off in the closed position now that it's cold, it's wide open, and it's the exact reverse of what we're hoping for. So that's not quite right. And here's our fuel line. Seems pretty hard. So let's start by turning off the valve. I don't remember if these mowers come with the fuel valve or not. I don't remember them. Hondas often do. I don't know if these Kohlers usually do. So this could have been added later. And this this fuel filter definitely added later. So let's go ahead and take this off the carburetor, get a little dish or a bowl, and just see what kind of fuel flow we're getting through this fuel line. Alright, so let's open this fuel valve and see how fast it comes out. I would think that flow is fast enough to keep the carburetor bowl filled, but maybe the needle seat inside that carburetor is not working well enough, but that to me would seem adequate. Let's turn that valve off. Alright, let's take the carburetor down. We'll take a closer look at it. Alright, this bracket for the automatic choke is held on by a couple of these Torx head screws. So let's get those off. Alright, choke spring wire. That lifts out. Yeah, these can be kind of tricky to get set up correctly, but I don't think this one's set up right. Alright, our carburetor's coming off along with the gasket. Alright, so there's the carb. Let's take it over to the bench, take that bowl down, and take a peek at the workings inside. Alright, let's crack this bowl open with a 10mm wrench. And we'll hang it over this. We got fuel in there. Bowl seems pretty clean. Float. This particular carburetor has the connection for a small vacuum hose to go, because some of these Kohlers were set up with a vacuum controlled choke pull-off diaphragm type thing. This does not have that. I don't know if that is inappropriate or for some reason we got the wrong carburetor. That's entirely possible. Alright, thanks for joining me. I've discovered something that I want to show you that I think is the problem here with this carburetor. And I'm going to do something you may think it's disgusting, gross, unsafe. I don't want any complaints about what I'm about to do, and don't tell my wife either, because she'd get mad about this too. I test the needle and seat using air from my mouth. So when the float's hanging, you know, it's wide open, you can easily blow air through the fuel inlet. Okay, I know that's gross. I cleaned it off, it's dry. I'm not licking it, I'm not tasting it, I'm just blowing a little air. And then when the float is resting and the needle is pushed down against it, like when the bowl is filled, I blow again and I can't blow through because the needle is seating against the seat just by the weight of the float, since I have it upside down, and I can't blow through. This way, blow through. This way, can't blow through. So when I put this carburetor back together, which I will do right now, I discovered that I could not blow air through this carburetor in any direction. Okay, I just did this simple mouth test like I always do. So the bowl now, the float should be hanging down in the carburetor, so I should be able to blow a little puff of air through there. I can barely blow any air through there. I can't. The needle is seating in there and not allowing fuel to flow through it. At least not easily. I can get a little bit of air if I use a lot of pressure. So let's open this up again. And I think the problem is this aftermarket carburetor is really not working right. We don't have adequate fuel flow through the needle and seat. When I look at this carburetor, look how thick that float is. Now the bowl sits right here. There's no room for that float to move up and down. It's like the bowl's too short, too small. and there isn't enough room for it to open, to drop down, and the needle and seat to open up adequately. So when this is in place, it's still can blow a tiny bit of air through there now. But I've done this enough times to know the float's not dropping down far enough to allow fuel to fill this bowl as quickly as it should. And that's our problem. Okay, getting a little bit of air through there now. So that's why I think it runs for 3 minutes, but the fuel is not flowing fast enough into the bowl to keep it going after the 3 minutes. So is it just a cheap aftermarket carburetor that's not working right? Maybe, probably. I gotta poke around and see if I got another one of these carburetors that we could try or something. But that's the issue. You know, the float should be hanging, and I can barely get any air to go through there. There's just not enough room in there for this float to drop down. And I think that's what's going on. Okay, so I took the float off, pulled the float out in the needle, and I think I see the problem and I see a potential solution. The seat on this guy is a brass insert, and it's not seated down far enough. You see how much that's sticking out? Like maybe a quarter of an inch. I want you to compare that to a similar carburetor right here, and it also has a brass seat insert, and it's sticking up at maybe a 1/16 of an inch. So because that on this one, that seat is set so high, it's cutting off the flow of fuel prematurely, and we're not getting good flow into the carburetor. So I'm going to try to drive that seat down, you know, 1/8 of an inch, just a little bit. And I think that might be the ticket to get fuel flow through the needle and seat back into the carburetor bowl, restored the way it should be. Alright, I've put the carburetor in my bench vise. And hopefully you can see the seat there. And I'm going to take a punch and a hammer, just try to drive it down just a little bit. Bingo. That's it. I'm going to stop right there. Don't want to overdo it. That's now what, a 1/16 of an inch instead of a quarter of an inch. I think that might be what we need to get this working again. Alright, I think we got it now. And once again, the air test. So the float needle is pressing against the seat. I can't blow air into it. It's sealing. Can blow, can't blow. It's sealing properly now. Let's put the bowl back on and try it again. Okay, float's hanging inside the bowl. I can't blow air into it. It's almost like the bowl's not big enough to accommodate that float. It's crazy. Alright, well, I'm done messing around with this. I think our diagnosis is accurate. You know, it's just not getting fuel flow through the needle and seat, and there's just not enough room in here for whatever reason. I don't know. I'm just going to stop messing around with it. I'm going to go online. I'm going to buy another carburetor, and hopefully this is just the bane of aftermarket stuff. It may or may not work. You might have to go through 2 or 3 of them until you find the right one. But that's why it's cutting out after 3 minutes. It's not getting adequate fuel flow through the needle and seat. And the cheap You know, aftermarket carburetor is the culprit. I'm quite convinced of that. And we gave it our best shot to save it. Just go online, get a new carburetor here tomorrow, and we'll get this guy back in business. Alright, hello and welcome back. It's been a few days since we recorded that previous segment, and we're working again to resolve the issue with this lawnmower featuring the Kohler engine. It would run for 3 minutes and then stop. And we had determined that the owner had put on an inexpensive aftermarket carburetor, which was not exactly the right one, but it was working. And the choke wasn't hooked up correctly, although the thing was still running. But we determined that the problem was insufficient fuel flow through the needle and seat in this carburetor. Remember that? It was not allowing enough fuel to come in fast enough, so it would run out of fuel and die. And it would slowly fill up again in the bowl and would run again for a few minutes and then die. We tried a few things to fix that, and in the end decided maybe we just need to get a better carburetor. So I went online, and guess what? I bought one. I bought 2 replacement carburetors. Now when you go to replace the carburetor, you want to get the right parts. You got to look up the part number, and to do that you need this model and serial number on the engine. That's how you look it up, and then you go somewhere like partstree.com and look at the schematic, and that serial number also comes into play because sometimes there's more than one option depending on the number, the serial number. And that was the case with this one. There was 2 options, and the serial number determined which one we needed. Then with that part number, you can buy it from wherever you look it up, Partstree, or you can go to Amazon. And my go-to for replacement carburetors, as I've told you, and you know if you watch any of my videos, is HIPA. H-I-P-A. But you know what? HIPA did not have this carburetor available. I actually went on their website and found it, but they were out of stock. So I decided, I guess I'm going to have to buy a couple, buy one of these other no-name brands. Actually, this one had a brand. It's Kippa with a K. So they do funny things, And I bought 2 because it's hit or miss with these guys sometimes, and it needs to be right. So I bought 2, hoping that between the 2 of them, one of them would work really well for us. And I've decided that I want to go with this guy here. The other one I'll save for another project. It's no big deal. Or I could send it back, whatever. But this one is going to go, and you'll remember our old carburetor, it failed the blow test. So we're going to try the blow test on this guy, and I'm going to show you why I have confidence that this needle and seat is working properly for us. Alright, so like I was telling you, when the float's hanging in the bowl, the needle and seat is open to allow fuel to flow through. So I should be able to have a small puff of air in the fuel inlet, and I can easily blow a little bit of air in there. But when the fuel rises and the float rises, and it cuts off the flow of fuel at the needle and seat, we can simulate that by turning this upside down. So now the weight of the float is closing the needle and seat. I can't blow air into it. So I feel like with that simple little test that I've done many times, this is allowing the correct amount of fuel flow into our carburetor. And it was just not happening with the old one. Because no matter how I held this old one, the flow of fuel was shut off in there. The float's not dropping. I can't get sufficient, I can't even blow air through there. So that's what it is. It's hit or miss with these cheap carburetors. Alright, so let's take the Kippa and install it on the machine and see if this will get running again. Alright, I've been working here with the camera off, but I replaced the fuel line, and I decided to go ahead and put an inline fuel filter back on here because when I peer into the tank, which you probably can't see, there is no screen there, there's no inline filter, And as dirty as this thing is, and dusty conditions in which it operates, I think it's good to have that on there. But he also had a shut-off, and I decided to eliminate that. If the needle and seat is working correctly, we don't need that. And I just don't have enough room here. I need this fuel line to not interfere with the governor arm. And I just couldn't find an easy way to put that disconnect on there, so I eliminated it. But we got new fuel lines and carburetors going up. The tricky thing on this is the linkage for the choke, so that when this turns, it pushes the choke plate open. All right, so I got the linkage on there, I think correctly. I just now need to put the 2 screws in that hold this bracket down, connect our throttle linkages, and that should be it. Well, let's get some fuel in here and see if this guy wishes to cooperate. All right. Excuse me. I've left the air filter off just so I can observe the action of the choke plate as it warms up. Doesn't seem to be leaking. Keep your fingers crossed. Alright, well, it's been 10 minutes and this thing is apparently doing okay. I don't feel like the choke plate is opening as fully as it should, so that's something else for us to investigate. But I think the flow of fuel from the tank to the carburetor bowl has been adequately resolved. So that part's solved. And that feels pretty good. Alright, thank you for joining me for today's video. I thought it was an interesting one with an unusual problem and really in the end a fairly simple solution. Basically, the owner of this was sabotaged by a low quality, inexpensive replacement aftermarket made in China carburetor. They're hit or miss. Sometimes they work great and sometimes they don't. So between three, the 2 that I bought and the one that the owner of the machine brought, we found one that seems to work pretty good. So this baby's back in business, and hopefully this video has been of help to you or of interest as we keep moving forward. So let's ship it and move on to the next project. Your comments and questions in the discussion below are always appreciated. I do enjoy reading them if you want to communicate with me that way. And remember, as I always like to say, guys, only you can put the do into do-it-yourself. I will see you on the next video. Bye.